Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode review of The Acolyte. Today, we're taking a look at 7 episode of 8 as we near the end of this series. Like last week, probably not going to spend a whole lot of time on this one because some of my thoughts about this week's episode are going to kind of be reliant on how things wrap up next week with the season finale. Or will it be the series finale? Who knows? Things aren't looking good so far. So this was another complete flashback episode where we had no ties to anything going on. And once again, they just shoot themselves in the foot when it comes to pacing. I didn't hate this episode. I liked seeing the different perspectives of the things that were going on. I thought the drama was compelling and how they set up everything and how things really went down and everything. And shocker, as we all kind of figured, the Jedi are somewhat to blame for the situation. I'm happy that like no one is really to blame here. It's really just a whole bunch of people getting mad at each other for kind of no reason and making a bunch of big mistakes, and things just don't go the way anyone thinks they're going to go. Just through like things happening beyond their control. Like I really doubted that all the witches thought that Indara could accidentally kill all of them by pushing them out of Kelnaka's mind. I really doubt that Mother Aniza, or whatever her name is, thought that going all smoky smoke form was going to get her stabbed in the chest. So just a lot of different things going on here. Although I do kind of question that whole. It's like, why was she doing the smoky smoke thing towards May? What was her plan? Was she going to possess May and have her run far, far away and then like teleport back or whatever? It's like I'm really curious about what her plan was there and why she did that. I'm assuming it was to do some kind of protective thing, but I really don't know what was going on there. So like I said, I didn't hate this episode. I thought that most of it was good, but I still have questions. I'm still kind of scratching my head on a couple things. Like, you didn't really I think that's, for me, that's like the big moment. You didn't do a good enough job telegraphing exactly what the exact thought processes were going on here. Especially since, that I know for a fact that that's a move out of the EU. That's something the Night Sisters did in like one of their original appearances. But in terms of like what her actual plan was, a little unclear. So I'm like, okay, why are you doing the thing you're doing? It's kind of a similar problem I have with Black Panther, because the Marvel movie. I kind of feel like that whole like first 5 minutes or whatever that sets up the main premise of the movie, I feel like shouldn't have happened the way it happened. I'm like, okay, the movie is happening because of reasons now, because you didn't do a great enough job setting this up. I kind of feel a little similarly with this, where it's like, well, you could have telegraphed that a little bit better. Soul definitely thought that she was doing something not great. That's pretty obvious. I think the Jedi side of things, everything was fine. I understood the motivations and the mistakes made and blah blah blah. It's the vagueness of the things going on with the Witch Clan that I'm still kind of a little foggy on. And it's like, okay, can we get more explanation for these people, please? Because that's where a lot of I just got a lot of questions about, and who knows, maybe we're gonna get some retroactive answers next week on some of that. I don't know. I guess we'll find out. The insinuation that May and Osha are a virgins in the Force, and that they're one being split in two, kind of, I find that very interesting in a good way. Because I know a lot of people are going to go, this is ruining the Phantom Menace and Anakin Skywalker story and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, not really. Because if anything, I could see this enhancing that story just to showcase how rare and unique Anakin's situation was. Because, like, maybe the only other time that there is even close to there being a record of this, and I'm pretty sure there's not actually going to be an official record on May and Osha in the Jedi Archive with everything that's gone on. But the only other time that we see in canon where there's even something close to Anakin is that the Force power had to be split between twins, between two different people, in order to work in the first place. So I could see that actually strengthening Anakin's story and the fact that he is indeed the chosen one and everything. But so yeah, I did find that an interesting nugget to throw in, because I mean we had all assumed at this point that the witches have used the Force to conceive the children, but going that far into detailing and the Jedi going, it's like, well, I mean, their midichlorian counts are exactly the same. It's like, even if they were twins, there would be differences. So the fact that they are exactly the same has some implications. So I thought that was kind of cool. And then the lightsaber fight between Kelnaka and the other Jedi, that was well done. It's like the production side of things, I have really no issue with this episode. I didn't think there was any weird edits. Unlike prior episodes, I thought it was directed well. I thought it was acted well. I'm decided I really like Carrie Ann Moss's Master Indara. Indara, that's right? That's not Green Lady. Hold on, maybe that's Green Lady. No, that's not Green Lady from the other episodes. I've gone and confused myself now. I'm just gonna. I really like Carrie Ann Moss's character. Let's go with that. Venestra, no, Venestra is the Green Lady. So yes, Indara is correct. I thought that was right. I second guessed myself there. I've decided that I actually really like that character because she's like the only level-headed one on this mission. It seems like, because I don't know. We don't know enough about Kelnaka. Torben clearly wants to be anywhere else other than this planet out in the middle of nowhere, and I don't know. This is maybe like Soul going through an angsty young adult phase or something like that. So it's like she was like the only one that really had any had any sense of, it's like, was like, hey, she, and it seems like she's a master for a reason, clearly. And she was the only one with any sense, and things just got way out of control very quickly. So I think I've decided I really like her character. She's definitely a performance and an actress worthy of being known as a Jedi Master. So I thought that was, I thought they did her well. But as for like the episode as a whole, it's like, I'm just like, why are you, why? And this is the thing where it's like, I need to know how next week wraps up to really see how I feel about this episode. Because right now I'm in this nebulous holding pattern where it's like, I don't really know how I feel about this episode other than the things I've already talked about. It's like, well, you could have explained the whole smoke power thing a little better, and the motivations behind doing that and everything. But like the big thing for me is that, why are you killing your pacing by doing this? Because the way flashbacks are kind of supposed to work in fiction is that it's doing one of two things, and oftentimes it's supposed to do both. Is that it gives the audience insight into how characters are behaving, and it's also to serve as motivation and like a revelatory, especially when you do a flashback late in the game like this. It's supposed to serve the character. I think it's supposed to serve the characters more than the audience, because I think at this point we kind of know everything that's happened. We don't know like the finer details, but I think most of us kind of guess that well, we all knew we all knew that something was up. Things didn't go the way we've known they've gone. So getting the finer details aren't really that important to us, the audience. Get the finer details being revealed at this point in the show and where we are with the characters is actually more important to Osha specifically, whom we never saw this episode. And by Osha, I mean adult Osha, grown Osha, the on not Oct 2 with the stranger, because she's been living this lie this whole time, thinking that May was at fault for everything. And while May's partially at fault for things that happened, Sol and Torben are kind of equally as somewhat partially responsible for everything else that happened on Brendok as well. And that's been hidden from her. So these details coming to light should be very important for her character. And why we don't see her in this episode learning those details, I'm very curious about. So it leads me to think that she has to learn these details in the next episode. And I'm just really, because there's only 8 episodes, right? I'm 99% certain there's only 8 episodes. Because this is one of those things. It's kind of like when I was doing the Bad Batch reviews earlier this year, we were getting down to the wire. I'm like, this last episode has to be longer because there is no way. Yeah. Here we go. I've got my little list up. Yeah, just 8 episodes. That's what I thought. So I feel like the next one has to be like super long because I don't know how we're going to be able to wrap this story up in a anywhere near satisfactory way. Because they've said it's a 1-season show, unless it's been a blatant lie. They've said it's this story is only supposed to last 1 season, and then there's other avenues they could explore should it get renewed and they do more. But as it stands, this specific story was always planned to be 1 season, 8 episodes. So next week either has to be really long, or I'm going to have to finally, do the judge gavel verdict thing. It was like, yeah, this was terrible. I don't know what anyone was thinking with any of this, because I just don't see how in 25 minutes, as some of these episodes have been about that long, how they can really wrap any of this up in that amount of time. The next episode has to be like an hour or more, because I just don't see how they wrap this up satisfactory in 30 minutes or less next week. Especially because, going back to what got me on this tirade is Osha needs the way the story has been going and it's been pushing forward. Osha needs to learn the truth about what happened at some point. We as the audience got those details this episode. But these are important details for her to learn. So how is she going to learn them next episode? And that's what I think is, for me anyway, that's what's going to be the make or break moment for this episode. Because depending on how they do it next episode, it could be a throw your hands up and go, well, what was the point of us having a whole episode to break up the pacing? And it's like, when you could have kept some of this to a flashback. Because as it stands right now, again, we don't know how next episode's going to turn out, but as it stands right now, I'm kind of sitting here thinking you should have taken half of this episode, edited all the not clearly not doing the whole, not revealing everything. You don't want to play you don't want to show your cards too early. But taking a lot of the first half of this episode with the Jedi perspective of everything, taking that and putting it in episode 3. And instead of episode 3 being episode 3, make it an hour-long season premiere where we see all the different perspectives of everything that happened that day. We see why the Jedi are there. We see why the witches are there. We see why the witches don't trust the Jedi. We see why the Jedi don't trust the witches. And we get all of that in what could be it's a kind of a prologue for the rest of the show. And it's it'd be a little longer of an episode compared to for the way this show runs anyway. and we get what we believe as the audience to be, this is what happened. This is the definitive answer for what happened. Then what would now be episode 2 and 3 is May going around enacting revenge on the Jedi that killed her family. We still think that she's the one that's in the wrong. She has lost herself to the dark side. And then it doesn't break up the pacing. We think we know all the answers. Then after the massacre of all the Jedi and everything, and Osha's speaking with the stranger, then we have our what I'm presuming to be a confrontation next episode. And then during that confrontation, then Soul reveals the truth, and we flash back, and we get the little bits and pieces from this episode that we didn't get earlier that have the final answers, and it plays out the way the writers want it to play out. I mean, just in terms of editing and pacing of the show, that sounds much better to me. And if they had been doing that this whole time, I don't think I would have really had too many problems with this, other than maybe if there was still some wonky, weird editing here and there. Like, again, you messed up a shot, reverse shot. How do you do that? That's always going to be weird. But so it really is just the pacing and the way the story is being presented to me that is ruining it for me. Because I think it is genuinely that bad of a presentation compared to, other Star Wars things where people go, oh, this is bad. I'm like Book of Boba Fett. I still really like that show, despite there being some obvious problems. But I can look past them. I can look past some of those things because it's like, well, but look at all this cool stuff it's got. Where here, it's like it's constantly getting in its own way. Because like with Book of Boba Fett, it was weird that suddenly we're in another episode of The Mandalorian and we're ignoring Boba Fett. But at least I care about The Mandalorian and Din Djarin. And oh, look, now Luke's here. Oh, look, now Ahsoka's here. So yeah, it was weird that they did all that and they kind of jingled the keys over in the wrong direction for a bit and they got sidetracked. But it was still all this other stuff I cared about. Where here in this show, it's like they're deliberately sabotaging. I know I'm 100% certain they are not doing this on purpose. They probably think that they're doing a good job of presenting the story, and I disagree. But it seems like that they're almost like deliberately sabotaging themselves here, where you start to set up something, and I'm like, okay, I'm excited to see where this goes. Oh, it's a flashback. Okay, well that ruined your momentum you had going, and now I'm suddenly a little. It's kind of had the reverse effect where I'm sort of slightly kind of less invested now. And then your next episode, nothing really happens, and now I'm even less invested. Then your 5th episode is pretty good, and it's got all these shocking moments in it. It's like, oh, wow, all the Jedi died, pretty much. And then you end. Then it's like, okay, you've kind of gotten me again. Let's see where this goes. Okay, I'm intrigued. You're building it up. We're starting to... The pacing's starting to, catch its footing, catch its breath. It's regaining its footing. That's what I should have said. It's regaining its footing. We're doing good. Oh, it's another flashback, and now you've killed the momentum again. It's like, why are you doing this, show? Why are you doing this? I want to like you, but you're literally doing everything. And it has nothing to do with the actual story being told. It is literally with the presentation for me. It's like you're doing everything in your power to make me disinterested in you because of how sloppily you're telling the story. And let me be clear in terms of like there are some rules of how you tell stories, and those rules are kind of meant to be broken. I mean, let's look at a lot of Christopher Nolan's filmography. He does a lot of nonlinear storytelling. Look at Memento. That's a great big example. Look at Dunkirk, where things are happening out of order and the audience is kind of left to pick up the pieces and figure out what is happening where, but that is part of the experience with those projects, and figuring out when and where things connect. The other day, I actually just went and saw the new Kevin Costner Western movie, and it kind of does that too, where it's got all these different, it's like 3 or 4 different stories that are, this isn't really a spoiler, but they're separate, but they're not, because there is this connective tissue between all of them, and it's like halfway through the movie you realize, oh wait, these are connected, okay, and that's not, like I said, that's not really a spoiler, but so it's like, so media doing that can be beneficial, but you have to have a talented storyteller to do that correctly. I think it also helps that now that I'm just now realizing the projects I've mentioned that have done that well are all movies, where this is a TV show where it's released week to week. So maybe if you only have 8 episodes, don't try to be funky with where you place your flashbacks, and maybe you need to do that more traditionally, because otherwise you run the risk of ruining the pacing of your show and it turning people off, which is what's happening with me and I think a lot of other people too. So yeah, I'm not really, like I said, I'm not really sure how I feel about this episode. As of right now, I'm edging closer to I liked it, despite a couple issues I have with it. But it's really going to be how the finale turns out to be that's going to tell me how I really feel about this episode. Because if they botch the ending and the flashback doesn't really have anything, doesn't tie in, it has to. I mean, it has to. But if like the flashback somehow doesn't really tie in that much to the finale, then it's like, okay, so the flashback was just for our benefit, the audience's benefit, and you ruined the pacing kind of for no reason. Well, why didn't you just edit all of this into 1 hour long episode and give us the full story at the beginning of the show? So yeah. So I mean, the editing is so important to how you tell your story, and how that affects pacing and everything. So I'm really curious to see how this all wraps up. If just as a lesson in maybe how not to tell your story, less so than actually watching it for the enjoyment. So yeah, it's been an interesting ride so far, because I mean, if any of you out there have listened to any of my Star Wars things, I'm pretty forgiving and pretty accepting of like 95% of Star Wars stuff out there. It takes kind of a lot to get me to feel meh, or even I did not like this when it comes to Star Wars. So, because like I mentioned, I really like Book of Boba Fett, despite it having some obvious issues. I think that's a big, indicator of how I feel about Star Wars. So that if I can like that, something like that has these obvious issues, then I pretty much like the majority of Star Wars things. So for Acolyte to kind of be turning me off, I think is definitely saying something about how poorly they are telling their story. Not necessarily that the story itself is bad. It's how the story is being told. Because I'm kind of re-editing this in my head and thinking, well, if you move this over here, then that presents some intrigue for over here, and then it's like, oh well, that could be a good, because then if we know this and we think we know that, then that could be a good twist later on. And how do you reveal that? And if you don't ruin the pacing, I could see myself really liking this story if they just weren't ruining it with the pacing and the editing. So anyway, that's my thoughts on this episode. Kind of a to be continued thing for next week, but next week is the finale, so we will see how this all turns out. So thank you for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that great stuff. Remember to follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Those links are in the description below, and I'll see you guys next week for the finale. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.